You know, usually when we think about revolutions, we picture barricades,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Like crowds in the streets.
Right. Flags waving, people shouting into megaphones. It's loud, it's public.
Very kinetic.
Exactly. It's physically confronting the system head on.
Which is, the classical model of resistance. You want to seize the levers of power or at least force the people holding those levers to listen to you. It's inherently visible.
But what if the ultimate rebellion isn't about fighting the system at all? What if, like, the most dangerous thing you could possibly do is just quietly walk away?
To simply turn your back. Yeah.
Right.
Refuse to participate and just build something entirely new in the shadows. That is a completely different kind of threat. I mean,
Yeah.
when you fight the system, you sort of validate its authority to govern the battlefield, right?
Oh, that's a good point.
But when you ignore it entirely, you render it obsolete.
And that is exactly the threat we are unpacking today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a truly fascinating piece of source material. It's a novel published back in 2002 called A Lodging of Wayfaring Men,
And adding to the mystique, it was actually published by an anonymous author.
which is wild.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to trace the core narrative of this book from the very first page to the final climax. It is the story of a group of brilliant outcasts. We're talking neuroscientists, international financiers, underground hackers.
Yeah, a real eclectic mix.
Then they make this collective conscious decision to just, well, opt out of the modern world and build a completely untraceable underground global economy.
And we really need to frame exactly why this matters to you, the listener, right now. Because even though this is a piece of fiction written, over 2 decades ago,
Yeah, over 20 years.
right, reading it today does not feel like reading fiction at all. It feels like looking at a highly detailed prophetic blueprint. It anticipates, with this eerie, almost unsettling accuracy, the exact debates we are having at this very second. We're talking about end-to-end encryption, decentralized finance, the architecture of cryptocurrencies, and the massive scale of government surveillance.
I mean, this book was writing about the cypherpunk ethos years before Bitcoin or the Silk Road ever even existed.
Exactly.
It's speculative fiction that essentially became documentary reality. But before we get into the timeline, we do need to lay down a quick ground rule for how we are going to navigate this deep dive.
Yes. Very important. It is crucial to acknowledge that the characters we are going to follow in this story engage in acts that are unequivocally highly illegal.
Extremely illegal.
Right. They are participating in massive tax evasion. They are actively defying federal agencies. They are subverting the established legal and economic order. And, on the flip side, the government agencies in this book are fighting to maintain systems that fund infrastructure, national defense, and social safety nets.
Which are real things society relies on.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we are going to neutrally follow the ideological and physical journey of the narrative. We are not taking a side here.
Right. No sides.
We are not endorsing anti-establishment anarchy, nor are we endorsing state surveillance. We are simply here to impartially unpack the story, the mechanics, and the philosophies exactly as they're written in the text.
We're looking at the architecture of their ideas and how those ideas conflict with the reality of a governed society.
Yeah.
And to do that, we are going to follow this story chronologically. We are starting with a desperate scientist stealing his own life's work in the dead of night, and we are going to end up inside the ultra-secretive Bilderberg group, locked in a debate over the ultimate fate of the global economy.
It is quite the journey.
Let's dive in. Okay, so let's set the scene. It is a rainy, dismal night in Chicago. Think of that classic deep gray, bone-chilling Midwestern rain.
Oh, yeah. Miserable weather.
And we meet Dr. George Demetrios. George is a brilliant neurochemist. He's been working for 14 relentless years, and he is on the absolute verge of a Nobel-level breakthrough in the study of neuropeptides. But right now, he's not in a lecture hall.
No, definitely not.
He is in a dilapidated old factory building, in the dark, frantically looting his own laboratory.
He is physically dismantling his life's work and packing it into cardboard boxes. We're talking centrifuges, microscopes, chemical residues, data drives, all of it.
And he's not alone, right?
No, he's surrounded by half a dozen men who are darting in and out of the shadows, moving with this highly controlled, almost military efficiency. They're trying to strip the lab bare before campus security catches them.
Because earlier that day, George had a confrontation that completely shattered his reality. He was called into the red-carpeted, walnut-paneled office of Dean Karsten, and the dean laid down this soul-crushing ultimatum.
Yeah, brutal.
George was told that he had to abandon his neuropeptide research entirely. He couldn't publish on it, he couldn't talk about it. If he wanted to keep his job at the university, he had to walk away from the very thing that made his career meaningful.
Just drop 14 years of work.
Exactly. But I want to pause here because the book mentions he's applying his chemical findings to the construction of the subconscious.
Right.
What does that actually mean biologically? I mean, why would the academic establishment be so terrified of a chemistry experiment?
That's a great question because it really explains the stakes. In the context of the story, George is proving that consciousness, memory, and the subconscious are not just, abstract psychological concepts.
Right.
They are physical chemical structures built by neuropeptides.
And neuropeptides are...
They're essentially small, protein-like molecules
Right.
used by neurons to communicate with each other. If George proves that our deepest subconscious drives are fundamentally chemical and can be mapped or even altered at a molecular level, well, it threatens the entire existing paradigm of behavioral psychology and psychiatry.
Ah, so he's not just making a discovery, he's rendering entire university departments obsolete.
Exactly. The academic establishment in the book operates kind of like a cartel. They rely on specific paradigms to secure massive government and private grants. George's research is a disruptive technology.
It's bad for business.
Yes. So the establishment pushes back hard. They dry up his funding. They fabricate false scandals about his methodology. They are trying to starve him out.
Wow.
And the psychological threshold George crosses in this dark laboratory is profound. The text explicitly tells us that his adrenaline starts to fade, and what replaces it is this primal dread. He looks around at the boxes and realizes, God help me, I am a thief.
Because he is. I mean, he's a doctor, he's a PhD, he's a guy who plays by the rules, but right then he realizes he is risking real physical jail time.
Yeah.
He's picturing himself locked in a cell with real bad guys, and the equipment technically belongs to the university. He's stealing their physical property.
He is, and this is where we have to introduce the orchestrator of this midnight heist, Philip Donson.
Right, Philip.
Philip is George's lifelong friend, someone who knows him down to his soul. Philip is the one who brought in this team of intelligent, capable men to execute the move. And he recognizes George's moral panic.
He sees him freaking out.
Yeah. So to calm him down, Philip provides a fascinating legal and philosophical justification for what they are doing. He calls it common law necessity.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of this argument. Because my first thought is, how on earth do you legally justify clearing out a university lab in the middle of the night?
It's a stretch, for sure.
I mean, I know I used the analogy before of a master chef sneaking into a restaurant to steal his secret recipe book back after being fired.
Right.
But even in that case, if the chef breaks a window to get in, he's committing a crime. So how does Philip spin this?
So Philip uses a very specific, extreme edge case analogy. He tells George, imagine you are dying of thirst in the desert. You are days from civilization. Your organs are literally shutting down. You stumble upon a locked, empty cabin, and looking through the window, you see bottles of water. Under the strict doctrine of common law necessity, you are permitted to break the window, enter the cabin, and drink the water to save your life.
Wait, really? Legally?
Yes, provided that your intent is to make full restitution later. You must intend to pay the owner for the water and the broken glass once you survive.
So Philip is equating George's intellectual survival with physical survival.
Precisely. Philip is arguing that for George, the loss of his 14 years of research would be a kind of death, the death of his mind, his purpose.
Wow.
So Philip's plan isn't just to steal the equipment and fence it. He sets George up with a blind, encrypted email account so he can send an anonymous message to the dean the next morning, offering to pay the university back in full for every single physical beaker and microscope he took.
I have to push back on this, though, because that sounds like an incredibly convenient loophole for a criminal to use.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh, I needed to steal this car to save my job, but I'll mail you a check later. Does Philip actually believe this is legal, or is he just trying to keep his friend from having a nervous breakdown?
It's a bit of both, honestly.
Yeah.
Legally, in the modern statutory system, it would absolutely not hold up in court. The police would arrest them immediately.
Right.
But philosophically, Philip is grounding George in an older, more fundamental concept of natural law.
Yeah.
George actually begins to compare himself to a modern Galileo, standing up to the ignorant, dogmatic rulers of the church.
Oh, that's heavy.
He is choosing to preserve his work, which he believes is genuinely important science for humanity, over obeying a corrupt institutional edict.
But packing up the lab is just the immediate crisis. Now George has to figure out what his life looks like when the sun comes up.
Yeah, the morning after.
So Philip flies him out of the country to this private, beautiful resort on a small island in the Bahamas.
Nice escape.
Yeah. The resort is owned by this enigmatic ex-smuggler named Tino who goes by Dick. And here, Philip presents George with a monumental, life-altering choice.
Right. Philip sits him down and essentially says, look, you can go back, you can return to normal life, apologize, get a regular corporate job, and just tinker with your chemical experiments in your garage on the weekends.
Which sounds awful for him.
Right. Or, Philip says, we can set you up with a new state-of-the-art lab right here. But this new lab will be completely outside the jurisdiction of the United States and completely outside the established scientific community. If he takes this path, George will be a ghost.
And Philip doesn't sugarcoat the reality of this choice, does he?
No, not at all.
He explicitly warns George about the cost. He says, the establishment will not just let you go. They will treat you as a dangerous rogue.
Right, a threat.
They will use public health violations or obscure medical practice rules or international licensing laws to destroy your reputation. You will be cast out of the club, and anyone who associates with you will be blacklisted too.
It's the ultimate cost of intellectual freedom in this narrative universe.
Yeah.
You can have the total freedom of your mind, but you lose all of society's protection. You lose the prestige, the safety net, the respectable title.
That is terrifying.
It is. But George chooses his research. He chooses the truth of his work over societal acceptance, stepping fully across the threshold into this underground world.
He physically packs up and leaves the Matrix. But here's the thing. A rogue scientist moving to the Bahamas is, it's a localized problem.
Well, yeah.
It's a physical rebellion. But while George is doing this with beakers and microscopes, there is a much larger, entirely invisible rebellion happening online. And the federal government is just starting to wake up to it.
That's right. The action shifts dramatically from a quiet laboratory to the high-stakes, high-stress environment of the FBI. We're introduced to two young guys, John Morales and Timothy Nicholson.
These two are great.
Yeah, they're 24-year-old technical experts, basically desk jockeys who have just pulled off an exhausting 12-hour digital manhunt.
They've been tracing this massive volume of internet traffic. And the strange thing is, 100% of this traffic is encrypted using PGP, pretty good privacy.
Yeah.
They can't read a single word of it. It's just a wall of mathematical noise. But they managed to trace the physical location of the servers generating this traffic to an old, worn-down house in an industrial area of Los Angeles.
And we really need to pause and explain exactly what PGP is and why it terrifies the FBI so much in this era. PGP, or pretty good privacy, uses a system called public key cryptography.
Right, let's make sure this is crystal clear for everyone listening because it's basically the engine of the whole underground in the book.
Yeah.
How does public key cryptography actually work? Why can't the FBI just, use a supercomputer to crack it?
I like to use the padlock analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine you want people to send you secret messages in the mail. So
Yeah.
you send out hundreds of open padlocks to anyone who wants one. This is your public key.
Anyone can have one.
Right. Anyone in the world can put their message in a box, snap your padlock shut on it, and send it to you. But here's the genius part. Once that padlock snaps shut, the person who locked it cannot unlock it.
Wait, even the sender?
Even the sender. The mailman cannot unlock it. The FBI cannot unlock it. The only thing in the universe that can open that lock is the single unique physical key that you kept for yourself, your private key.
So even if the FBI intercepts the box while it's in transit, it's completely useless to them. They just have a locked box.
Exactly.
And computationally, cracking that lock without the private key would take a supercomputer millions of years because it relies on factoring unimaginably large prime numbers.
Exactly. The mathematics are practically unbreakable. And historically, the U.S. government was so terrified of PGP when it was invented by Phil Zimmerman in the 1990s that they actually classified the encryption software as munitions.
That is insane.
They treated a mathematical formula the same way they treated surface-to-air missiles, making it illegal to export.
Which perfectly explains the atmosphere at the FBI when Morales and Nicholson find the source. The higher-ups in Washington, D.C. are terrifyingly invested in this trace. Morales and Nicholson are suddenly promoted to acting field agents and ordered to ride along with a heavily armed strike team the very next morning.
Yeah, these two tech kids are sitting in their car outside the target house, absolutely trembling. Morales asks the strike team leader, this intense agent named Goroshin, why they need battering rams, body armor, and assault rifles when they haven't observed a single weapon at the house.
Encryption gives this chilling response.
He says the people inside are committing treason against the United States of America.
Treason, I mean, that is the highest possible escalation, so the anticipation is at a fever pitch. The strike team approaches the house in LA. They're using parabolic microphones to listen through the windows.
Like out of a movie.
Exactly. They hear voices speaking Eastern European dialects, talking about signal throughput and connections. Finally, they breach. They kick the doors down, weapons drawn, screaming, expecting a major violent confrontation with hardened terrorists.
And it is the most incredible anticlimax.
It's hilarious.
They burst into the living room, and there are just four guys standing there in T-shirts. They immediately put their hands raised in the air, and in broken English, they calmly say, "We have no weapons, do not shoot, we want attorney."
It's almost comical. The FBI brings the battering ram, and these guys don't even flinch. They just ask for their lawyer.
But the gravity of the situation becomes clear during the interrogation. The four men have retained a high-powered, incredibly expensive criminal attorney named Anthony Barry.
Barry is great.
He is. Barry meets with Gus Van Zandt, the imposing, aggressive boss of the FBI's cybercrimes unit. When Van Zandt officially states the charge, treason, Barry literally laughs out loud in his face.
He just mocks him.
He's like, "Treason. For running a computer network, you've got delusions of grandeur."
But Van Zandt is dead serious. And we have to impartially examine Van Zandt's perspective here, because his fear is completely valid from the standpoint of the state.
It really is.
Van Zandt explains the government's underlying terror. The FBI believes these men are part of a coordinated plot to bankrupt the government of the United States.
Right.
Through untraceable commerce.
Which the government refers to as these unregulated, untaxed economic spaces. They call them cracks in the matrix.
Cracks in the matrix, which is such a vivid phrase, but how does a crack in the matrix bankrupt a superpower? I mean, really?
Well, think about the mechanics of taxation. A government can only tax what it can see.
Right.
If you buy a car, there's a registered title, a bank transfer, a visible transaction. The state takes a cut, and that cut funds the roads, the military, the schools, and the social safety nets.
Oh.
But if a parallel economy emerges that is completely encrypted, where millions of dollars in goods and services are exchanged anonymously, the state cannot see the transactions.
And if they can't see them, they can't tax them. And if that untaxable economy grows large enough, the tax base shrinks, the national debt spirals, and the infrastructure of the state collapses.
Exactly. Van Zandt isn't just, an evil bureaucrat. He views himself as the defender of civilization.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that untraceable commerce isn't just used by freedom-loving libertarians.
Right.
It's used by cartels, human traffickers, and terrorists. If the government loses the ability to track money, they lose the ability to govern entirely.
That context makes the stakes so much higher. So who is actually behind this crack in the matrix? It's not just these four Eastern European hardware technicians in LA.
No.
We find out they are just the server guys. The real architects of this underground are a group known as the Free Souls.
The Free Souls. They are a decentralized network of college-aged kids, brilliant hackers, and rogue programmers spread across multiple countries. They're coordinated by a psychologist named Michael.
Michael's a very interesting guy.
Very. And their current desperate mission is to build something called Gamma Central, which is a massive, fully encrypted online marketplace. It's essentially an early fictionalized version of the Silk Road.
And Michael is pushing his team with this intense, almost frantic urgency. Why? Because right now, there is only one Gamma market. Gamma 1.0 is centralized.
You're right. There's a single point of failure.
Exactly. And as long as there is only one, they are a single physical target. The FBI can raid the house in LA, seize the physical servers, and shut the whole thing down. But Michael's strategy is brilliant. He tells his coders, we have to finish the software quickly so we can release it open source to the public.
And the moment they do, 100 different Gamma markets will pop up all over the world.
The Hydra effect. You cut off one head and two more grow back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Michael realizes that their only true safety lies in decentralization. Once the code is in the wild, the Free Souls become just one target among hundreds. If the FBI raids one server in Los Angeles, an identical market spins up in Tokyo and another in Iceland. They become completely untraceable and essentially immortal.
Okay, let's look at the asymmetry here because it's fascinating. The FBI is literally kicking down physical doors with guns, but the hackers are just writing lines of code.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the early 2000s when the music industry was trying to sue individual teenagers for downloading songs on Napster or LimeWire. The establishment thinks in terms of physical territory, like, we can raid this house, we can arrest this person.
Right.
But the rebels are operating in a mathematical dimension the establishment can't physically touch. You can raid a house, but you cannot raid a mathematical formula.
Exactly. The government is using 20th century kinetic tactics to fight a 21st century digital war. They are trying to arrest an idea.
Right. But here's the reality check. Hackers writing code in their bedrooms and rogue scientists moving to the Bahamas, that's all incredibly romantic. But you cannot build a parallel underground global economy on enthusiasm.
Oh, definitely not.
The encrypted servers, the offshore bunkers, the million-dollar legal retainers for guys like Anthony Barry. Where does the actual capital come from? Because you can't pay a lawyer in ideology.
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
This brings us to the financial engine of the movement. James Farber.
Farber.
Farber is an incredibly successful, highly private international financier based in Chicago.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating character. He's half Korean, half Jewish, and he has a reputation in the financial world for being fiercely independent.
Very solitary guy.
Yeah, he actively avoids publicity. He doesn't go to the industry galas. He despises the old boys club. He just sits in his office and makes exceptionally smart, high-risk, high-reward deals.
And he rarely gives interviews. But he agrees to sit down with Frances Marston, a very talented, very sharp financial journalist. Frances has done her research. She brings up an old Playboy interview where Farber mentioned that the secret of his success is written on a piece of paper he's kept since he was a kid.
Yeah.
Frances is expecting, some ancient proverb, some Sun Tzu Art of War quote, or some complex mathematical formula for market analysis. Instead, Farber reaches up, takes a small, cheap picture frame off his office wall, and hands it to her. Inside is a faded piece of lined school paper that he wrote on when he was 10 years old.
10 years old.
Yeah, and it contains just 3 simple sentences. That which I have seen and heard, I bear witness to. I believe my own senses. I believe my own mind.
It's so disarming. Frances actually laughs at first because she's so underwhelmed. It sounds like something a kid writes in a diary, not the secret to billions of dollars.
Right.
But then she realizes the absolute dead serious gravity of those words. She asks him for the story behind it. Why did a 10-year-old boy write a manifesto about trusting his own mind? And Farber tells her a harrowing, defining story from his childhood. He grew up in a very safe, loving, stable, middle-class home. But one day, he was riding his bike on the edge of his neighborhood, near a park. He looked through a large, unobstructed living room window of a nearby house, and he saw a man brutally punch his wife in the head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He saw the physical impact, and he saw the woman fall to the floor. Farber tells Frances that because he had never encountered that kind of visceral malevolence before, his brain immediately tried to reject it.
It just couldn't process it.
Exactly. He desperately wanted to pretend it didn't happen, that he had just imagined it, or that they were just playing around.
It's extreme cognitive dissonance. His internal reality, the safe world he knew, didn't match the external input. So his brain tried to simply delete the input.
Exactly. It's a deeply human defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But he remembered his father always saying, there's no use pretending it isn't so. So Farber stopped his bike in the park, sat on a bench, and he forced himself to say out loud, I did see that. That man did hurt his wife.
Wow.
He consciously refused to shut down his mind or deny the reality of his own perception. And he realized right then that human beings have the terrifying psychological ability to simply deny what they see if it makes them uncomfortable. He made a vow to never, ever do that.
And he attributes his massive success in business to this exact trait, the ability to look at reality clearly when the rest of the herd is shutting down their minds.
Yes. In Austrian economics, which heavily influences this book, there is a focus on subjective value and market realities over central planning. When everyone in the market is caught up in a speculative bubble, denying the reality of bad fundamentals, Farber sees the truth and acts on it. He trusts his own senses over the consensus of the experts.
And Frances's reaction to this is beautiful. The interview completely transforms into this deep, soulful conversation. She matches his vulnerability with a powerful historical story of her own.
It's a great moment.
She tells Farber about her grandmother, who was a Hungarian Jew during World War II. Her grandmother started having German newspapers translated very early on, and she realized quickly that the Nazis were a genuine existential threat.
While everyone else in her community, the respected local leaders, the rabbis, the wealthy business owners, were saying that Germany was far too cultured and civilized to descend into barbarism.
They were in denial.
Completely. They said the threat would pass, that it was just political rhetoric. They told her grandmother she was crazy. They accused her of being hysterical and just frightening the children.
Yes, Frances says that the hardest part for her grandmother wasn't packing up her bags or leaving her home. The hardest part, the thing that took the most immense, agonizing courage, was defying her own community.
Right.
It was having the strength to trust her own perception of reality over the accepted, comfortable consensus of everyone she loved. When her family sold their business to flee, someone in their own community actually threw a rock through their window for being alarmists.
It perfectly mirrors Farber's philosophy. It highlights the extreme, punishing difficulty of holding onto your own truth when the entire world is telling you that you are wrong.
But I want to ask you about the psychological toll of this, because it's easy to say, I trust my own mind, but isn't it incredibly isolating?
Oh, massively.
I mean, humans are fundamentally social creatures. We literally evolved to rely on the herd for survival. If you trust your own senses when literally everyone around you, your friends, your family, your institutions, tells you that you are crazy, doesn't that lead to madness? How do these characters survive that crushing isolation?
It is isolating, and it does drive people to the brink. And that is exactly why the romantic connection between Farber and Frances is so crucial to the narrative.
It's not just a subplot.
No, it's not just a detour. It's a psychological necessity. They recognize this shared burden of radical truth in each other. They understand the immense cost of seeing clearly. By finding each other, they are no longer isolated. This shared philosophical bedrock is what allows them to survive outside the matrix. They fall deeply in love because they have found a true peer.
But the path isn't easy. Farber carries a massive shadow from his past. He suffers a severe emotional breakdown born out of intense guilt over his deceased wife, Maggie, who died tragically young.
Yeah, that scene is tough.
He feels like by loving Frances, he is somehow betraying Maggie, cheating her out of the love she earned. He literally collapses on the floor, weeping, terrified he's going to ruin this new relationship with his trauma.
But Frances handles this crisis with breathtaking emotional intelligence. She doesn't get defensive, and she doesn't try to compete with a ghost.
Right.
Instead, she asks Jim for his photo albums and old letters. She spends hours getting to know Maggie through these artifacts. And then she does something extraordinary. She writes a heartfelt, physical letter to Maggie.
To his dead wife.
Yes. In it, she validates Jim and Maggie's past love, she honors Maggie's memory, and she assures her that she is not threatened by Jim's capacity to love deeply. She cements their future by integrating the past rather than fighting it.
It's this incredible emotional bedrock that allows Farber to function. Because while he is finding personal peace, he is simultaneously the secret financial engine of the entire underground rebellion.
He's funding the whole thing.
And he needs that psychological stability because the war with the government is about to escalate drastically. While Farber and Frances are building their life together, the FBI and the NSA are closing in on the Gamma Network. We move into this thrilling, high-stakes cat-and-mouse game.
Right. Michael, the coordinator of the Free Souls, gets a critical, terrifying tip. The tip comes from Anthony Barry, the lawyer, who is getting back-channel information from Agent Morales.
Morales from the FBI.
Yeah, Morales, the young FBI tech we met earlier. He is growing increasingly disillusioned with the collateral damage of his job, and he has started leaking info.
Which is a huge risk.
Massive. The tip is that the government is planning a major coordinated raid tomorrow morning. But the target has shifted. They aren't hitting the decoy Seattle facility. They have found the real hub in Austin, Texas.
And the Free Souls are completely unprepared. Michael has to engage in some serious impromptu spycraft. He coordinates with a guy named Richard, their new intelligence expert.
They immediately start flooding the Austin computers with fake data and misinformation to throw the FBI's digital surveillance off the scent.
But they have a massive physical problem. They have to evacuate the actual tech team, the human beings, out of Texas and get them across the border into Mexico before the FBI kicks the door down at dawn.
And their solution is a brilliant piece of physical misdirection. They need the Austin facility to look occupied so the FBI surveillance teams don't realize they've been tipped off and trigger the raid early.
Right.
So Richard's team goes out onto the streets of Austin and hires a group of homeless men.
I love this part.
They bring them into the facility, give them booze, food, and magazines, and simply tell them, hey, just hang out here, drink, and watch the place for us. We'll be back this afternoon to pay you.
It's incredible. The heavily armed FBI strike team breaches the facility, adrenaline pumping, flashbangs ready, expecting master hackers and encrypted servers, and they find a bunch of confused vagrants reading magazines and drinking beer.
While the actual tech team is driving across the border to Monterey, Completely safe.
But this close call is a massive wake-up call for the free souls. They realize that as long as they have physical locations, even hidden ones, they have an absolute vulnerability.
The government will always have more guns and more battering rams.
Exactly. So by November, they force a massive technological leap. Gamma shifts from a centralized server model Gamma 1.0 to Gamma version 2.0, which is a fully distributed computing system.
A peer-to-peer network.
Exactly. They close down almost all of their physical computer centers. The network now exists on the computers of every single user across the globe. But let me stop you there, because the mechanics of this are so important. If there is no central server, how does the marketplace function?
Well,
Like, if I buy something on Amazon, Amazon's central server validates my credit card and tells the seller to ship the item. If Gamma 2.0 has no central server, who validates the transaction? How do users protect themselves from fraud? If there's no server, there's no customer service to call when someone steals your money.
that is the core challenge of decentralized systems, often called the Byzantine generals problem. Gamma 2.0 solves this through cryptographic validation across the nodes.
The nodes.
Yes. When a transaction happens, it isn't verified by a central authority. It is verified by the collective network of users. The software on everyone's computer checks the cryptographic signatures to ensure the funds exist and the exchange is valid. It operates on a system of distributed trust.
Which is exactly how modern blockchain and Bitcoin work. I mean, this book predicted the mechanics of the blockchain in 2002.
It did. And the result is that there is no central server to raid anymore. There is no door to kick down. The FBI and the NSA are essentially rendered powerless in the physical realm. The network is everywhere, and therefore it's nowhere.
Okay, let's use an analogy here. Gamma 1.0 is like a physical library. If the government doesn't like the books being read, they can find the building, lock the doors, and burn the library down.
Right.
But Gamma 2.0 is like a spoken language. Once thousands of people are speaking it to each other, you can't arrest the alphabet.
That's a great way to put it. And this realization hits the FBI hard, particularly Agent John Morales. He watches his boss, Assistant Director Jones, become increasingly frustrated, power-hungry, and reckless.
Jones really loses it.
He does. Because they can't hit the network, Jones starts authorizing kinetic raids on innocent people just because they might be connected to Gamma. And this recklessness results in a tragedy. An innocent man is killed during a botched, highly aggressive raid in Dallas.
And Morales is experiencing his own profound awakening during all this. He's being mentored by a guy named Max, who runs a bar Morales frequents.
Max is a great character.
Yeah, Max is this wise, tough guy character who survived neighborhood bullies as a kid by learning how to fight back. Max helps Morales see that he isn't weak. He just lacks the specific tough guy skills of the agents around him.
Right.
More importantly, Max shows him that participating in an unjust system, even passively as a tech guy behind a desk, is destroying his soul. Morales realizes that state violence is the only tool the government has left to maintain its monopoly on currency.
Morales realizes that the FBI, under Jones, has become a corrupt, institutional machine lashing out in panic. So he decides to defect. He passes his final crucial pieces of intel to Barry, the lawyer, and he simply walks away. He quits the FBI entirely to escape the moral compromise of enforcing the Matrix.
So, the physical war is effectively over. The hackers have vanished into the digital ether, their network is bulletproof, and the good agents inside the system are walking away. But here's where I have to ask. If the physical battle is over, where does the conflict go next? The establishment isn't just going to give up, right? The stakes are too high.
No, they absolutely don't give up.
Yeah.
The battle moves to the ideological realm. The establishment realizes they can no longer arrest the network, so they decide they must crush the philosophy behind it. If they can convince the public that the network is evil or co-opt its leaders, they can regain control.
And this ideological war forces our characters to confront the very foundations of their beliefs. Which brings us back to Philip Donson.
The orchestrator of the initial heist.
Exactly, and the philosophical heart of the movement. Philip experiences a massive plot twist in his own life that perfectly mirrors the themes of truth and illusion.
Yes. Philip goes to visit his elderly mother. For his entire life, his mother had told him this incredibly heroic story about his father, that his father was a brave partisan fighter who died fighting the Nazis in World War II.
A real hero story.
Yeah, it was a foundational myth of Philip's identity. He built his sense of courage on this legacy. But during the visit, his mother hands him a sealed letter and makes him promise not to read it until he leaves.
And when he reads it back at his apartment, it completely shatters his reality. His mother confesses that the story was a complete lie.
Mm.
She didn't marry his father during the war. She got pregnant by an American soldier in a displaced persons camp after the war, a man who promptly abandoned them.
Yeah.
She made up the heroic partisan story to protect Philip from the social stigma and shame of illegitimacy.
Initially, Philip is reeling. It's a huge blow. But ultimately, this revelation frees him. It severs his final tether to the comforting myths of the past. He realizes that if his own foundational personal history was a fiction designed to manage his emotions, he has a mandate to rigorously examine every other accepted truth in society.
Which leads him to a profound theological and philosophical debrief with a theology student named Steve Caputa in Vancouver. Steve seeks Philip out because he knows Philip's influential writings under the pseudonym Prester John.
Right.
And their conversation goes incredibly deep into the history and psychology of centralized control.
Philip traces the concept of rulership back to ancient antiquity, specifically to Nimrod.
Nimrod from the Bible.
Yes. He notes that Nimrod, the mighty hunter, is described in ancient texts as the first man recorded to rule over other men. Philip explains how early agricultural societies didn't have kings or states. They had voluntary cooperation and emergent order. But Nimrod introduced military rulership. He created a legend around himself to justify extracting wealth from producers without offering mutual exchange.
Philip argues that the desire for something for nothing, for power and wealth without providing voluntary value, is the root of all collective control. He then traces this forward to the 1st century and the Roman Empire, specifically the Emperor Constantine.
Right. Philip argues that Constantine masterfully weaponized religion. The Roman Empire was failing, its citizens lacked duty, and the state was collapsing. So Constantine took the revolutionary, highly individualistic teachings of the early Christians and fused them with the massive apparatus of the state.
He turned it into a control mechanism.
Exactly. Philip tells Steve that institutions, whether they are religious or governmental, survive by teaching humans that they are inherently flawed, sinful, and utterly incapable of managing their own lives.
Because if people believe they are inherently flawed and helpless, they remain dependent on the institution for salvation or protection or economic management.
Exactly. Philip utterly rejects this premise. He argues for the inherent greatness of humanity and the absolute supremacy of individual reason. He says that people don't need a pattern above, a king, a state, or a central bank to dictate their lives. They are capable of incredible spontaneous order if they simply trust their own minds.
And this philosophical stance sets the stage for the ultimate climax of the story. Because of his highly influential anonymous essays, Philip receives an invitation to the absolute inner sanctum of global power.
The annual meeting of the Bilderberg Group in Europe.
Right. This is the room where it happens. The Bilderberg Group is a real historical entity founded in 1954, initially to foster dialogue between Europe and North America to prevent another world war. But in the context of the novel, it is the ultimate gathering of the Hobbesian Leviathan. Presidents, international central bankers, media titans, the true global elite.
And James Farber actually got the invitation first because of his immense wealth, but he passes it to Philip, saying this is Philip's arena. So Philip walks into the belly of the beast.
At a private dinner during the conference, Philip is confronted by 2 men representing the elite. Dr. Donnelly, a refined, highly educated older statesman, and Arthur Blackstone, a blunt, aggressive American power broker. And they don't threaten to kill him.
No, they try to reason with him. They try to co-opt him.
Right.
And the argument the elite present here is vital to understand because it's not cartoonishly evil. It's based on a deeply held, genuinely believed paternalism. Dr. Donnelly pulls back the curtains of the private restaurant window and points down to the street below. He points to an average guy, an auto parts delivery driver making his rounds.
And Donnelly says, look at Joe Average down there.
Exactly. Donnelly argues that without centralized control, the complex global system collapses.
Donnelly's argument is basically the tragedy of the commons. He says that the masses simply cannot handle pure freedom. They are irrational, emotional, and short-sighted.
Right.
They need to be managed, regulated, and directed by the elite. He argues that the global supply chain, international peace, and economic stability require a massive overarching state. If you let the anarchists and the free souls dismantle the state, civilization will regress 500 years into chaos and tribal warfare.
It's a very persuasive argument.
Yeah.
Blackstone is even more direct. He tells Philip that while the elite might extract wealth through taxes and enforce compliance, they provide order in return. They offer Philip a deal.
The ultimate bribe.
Yep. They tell him to stop writing his radical essays. to slowly change his economic theories to support the establishment's control mechanisms. They essentially offer him a seat at the table, immense power and wealth, if he helps them manage the Joe averages and bring the Gamma network under state control.
But Philip delivers this devastating rebuttal. He looks at these masters of the universe and completely rejects their fundamental premise. He tells them, these Joe averages are not a lesser species than you and I. He points out that their life experiences or education might be different, but their essence, their capacity for reason is exactly the same.
Yeah.
He says, I used to be a Joe average and I made it out. He absolutely refuses to manipulate the underground movement to keep the elite in power.
Philip counters Donnelly's fear of chaos with the concept of spontaneous order. He argues that language, the internet, and complex markets weren't invented by a central committee. They emerged naturally from the voluntary interactions of free people.
That's a really good point.
And he leaves them with a stark, chilling warning. He acknowledges that the governments of the world have armies, tanks, and guns. But he tells them that the free market, this new decentralized Gamma network, has the 10 million best and brightest minds on the planet writing code and building systems. He tells them, don't piss them off.
Okay, I want to unpack this showdown because this is the ultimate philosophical tension of the entire deep dive. It is security versus freedom. I want to challenge you, the listener, to think about this deeply right now. Who is right? Is society a fragile, incredibly complex machine that requires elite mechanics to keep it from exploding? Does it require a state to prevent us from destroying ourselves?
Yeah.
Or is society a living organism that thrives best, innovates fastest, and behaves most morally when it is left completely untethered, relying on the mutual exchange of value?
It's the central question of political philosophy. The establishment argues that without a shepherd, the sheep will wander off a cliff or be eaten by wolves. Philip argues that there are no sheep, only human beings who have been deliberately convinced they are sheep to keep the shepherds in business.
And Philip walks away from the table. He leaves the dinner. He essentially tells the most powerful men in the world that their era is over, and he walks out the door. The battle lines are permanently drawn. The physical war was won by the code, but the ideological war has just begun.
Which brings us back to our reality. What does this all mean? Let's bring this incredible, sprawling narrative arc all together.
We started in a rainy Chicago alley watching Dr. George Demetrios risk federal prison, terrified but resolute, just to protect the physical manifestation of his own mind.
We saw James Farber and Francis Marsden build an impenetrable fortress of radical truth around their family, choosing the extreme psychological isolation of their own perception over the comforting lies of the herd.
We watched Michael and the brilliant hackers of the Free Souls outsmart the battering rams and the assault rifles of the FBI, building an unstoppable, distributed digital economy that lived everywhere and nowhere.
And finally, we saw Philip Dodson walk into the Bilderberg Group, looking the global elite in the eye and telling them that human beings simply do not need to be ruled.
It's a massive story. But why does this deep dive matter to you today?
Because the systems and philosophies described in this novel from 2002 predicted the exact technological and political landscape we are navigating right now. It anticipated the rise of Bitcoin, the battle over end-to-end encryption on our messaging apps, the debates over central bank digital currencies, and the pervasive algorithmic reach of global surveillance.
It's basically a documentary now.
Yeah. But more importantly, it asks you a direct, deeply personal question. How much of your own life is tethered to the matrix? How much do you rely on institutions, governments, media, universities to tell you what is true? And how much do you actually trust your own mind to verify reality?
That is the ultimate question. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Late in the story, Frances Marsden has this recurring, terrifying nightmare. In the dream, she is standing in a dark room and she knows someone is stealing from her. She thinks she is staring right at the thief in the shadows. But then a workman walks in, turns on the lights, and carries away a massive pane of dark, tinted glass that had been sitting right in front of her face the whole time.
The revelation in the dream is profound. She realizes she wasn't looking at the thief at all. The dark glass was acting as a mirror. The thief was actually standing behind her, and the dark glass had completely distorted her perception of reality without her even knowing it was there.
So as you go about your day-to-day, I want you to ask yourself, what is the dark glass in your own life? What invisible barriers, what comforting myths or universally accepted truths are actually preventing you from seeing reality clearly? What are you refusing to bear witness to?
It's a question that requires the raw courage of a 10-year-old James Farber, sitting on a park bench, or a grandmother in Hungary translating a newspaper when everyone else told her to look away.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into a lodging of wayfaring men. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and above all else, believe your own mind. Until next time.